I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed with a notification from a store I'd never heard of. At first, I ignored it. Then another came, and another, all with my name on the receipts. My hands went cold. I hadn't bought anything in weeks. I opened the latest message. It showed a bill. $4,000 charged to my account at 2:11 a.m. A voice behind me whispered, "You weren't supposed to see that." I froze when I heard that voice. It came from behind me, low and tight, like someone trying to swallow panic but failing. I turned slowly, the phone still glowing in my hand. My brother-in-law, Mark, stood in the doorway of my laundry room. His face was pale, his shoulders stiff, and for a moment neither of us said anything. The dryer hummed behind me, steady and warm, but the air felt cold. "Mark," I said. "What is this?" He didn't answer. He just stared at the floor, rubbing the back of his neck the way he always did when he got caught in a lie. He used to do that in high school, when he borrowed his father's truck without permission. Some habits don't age. I held the phone up. $4,000. Charged at 2 in the morning, to my account. "And you're standing here telling me I wasn't supposed to see it?" He breathed out. Sharp. Shaky. "Look, it's not what you think." "What I think," I said, "is that someone used my card at 2:11 a.m. And I know it wasn't me, because I was asleep in this house. And the only other person with access, other than my wife, is you. Because you've been staying here for the week." He flinched at that. "Please, just listen." "No," I said. "You listen. I want you to tell me what you bought right now. All of it. Because I just opened the receipt, Mark, and I don't recognize a single thing on it." He squeezed his eyes shut. Exhaled. "It's complicated. It always is with you," I muttered. He looked up sharply, as if that hit harder than the accusation. For a moment, I felt a pinch of guilt. But then I remembered the months of strange charges, little ones I had brushed off. $20 here, 30 there. Subscription fees for things I didn't sign up for. I had told myself it was a glitch, a mix-up, something the bank would fix. But this wasn't a glitch. $4,000 was not an accident. I stepped toward him, the laundry basket at my feet forgotten. "Where is the merchandise?" He swallowed. "It's not here." "What do you mean it's not here?" "Then, where is it?" He didn't answer. His silence said more than his words ever could. I tapped the receipt with my thumb. It was a luxury clothing store. I looked it up. "This place doesn't sell socks and belts, Mark. It sells suits. Thousands of dollars suits. Shoes worth more than my car." He flinched. "It wasn't for me." I stared. "Who was it for then?" He hesitated, and I saw something flicker across his face. Fear, maybe. Shame. A secret trying to crawl its way out. Before he could speak, a soft voice drifted down the hallway. "Everything okay?" It was my wife, Linda. I turned toward her. She stood near the kitchen doorway, wiping her hands on a towel. Her hair was tied back, still damp from her shower. She looked tired, more tired than usual, but calm. She didn't know yet. She didn't know any of it. "Yeah," I said, forcing my voice steady. "Just talking to Mark." She smiled politely. She always tried to make him feel included. He'd been her little sister's husband for 19 years. They'd been through miscarriages, job losses, hospital scares. To Linda, he was family. To me, well, I was starting to reconsider. She walked past us and headed toward the bedroom. "Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. Don't be late." When she disappeared, I turned back to Mark. He looked relieved that she hadn't heard anything. Too relieved. "Sit down," I said. He blinked. "What?" "Sit down." He sat on the bench beside the hallway shoe rack, shoulders folding inward like he was shrinking into himself. I leaned against the wall. "Start talking." He rubbed his forehead. "I'm in trouble." "No kidding. I mean real trouble," he snapped. "Not the kind you fix with a phone call." "Then why are you dragging me into it?" "Because I didn't have a choice." "You always have a choice, Mark." He shook his head. Not this time. I waited. I had time. Finally he whispered, I owe someone money. I closed my eyes for half a second. Of course. Of course it was that. How much? I asked. He hesitated. Then 8,000. I almost laughed, or choked. $8,000. You owe $8,000 and you thought the solution was to steal my card? I didn't steal it. He blurted. Linda gave it to me. My heart slammed against my ribs. That's a lie. He shook his head. No, she gave it to me last month. She said you wouldn't mind. She said, you told her I could borrow it for emergencies. I stared at him, my pulse suddenly roaring. Mark. I never said anything like that. Ever. His face drained of color. But she said, she lied. The words echoed between us, heavy and terrifying. He opened his mouth, closed it again, then whispered, why would she lie about that? I didn't know, but I felt the floor shift under me like somebody had taken a part of my life I trusted, my marriage, and cut a seam I didn't know was there. What did you spend the rest on? I asked quietly. He looked down. Rent, bills, some things I shouldn't have bought. And the $4,000 suit? He clenched his jaw. It wasn't for me. I stepped closer. Then who was it for, Mark? He looked up slowly, eyes glassy, voice thin. My wife, he said. It was for Jenna. She doesn't know. She thinks I've been saving. I thought if I could give her one nice thing, maybe she'd stay. I blinked, stunned. Stay. Where would she go? He looked away. She's been distant, avoiding me, talking to someone online. I thought I could fix it. And instead I said, you dug yourself deeper. He nodded, defeated. I took a breath, a long one. Anger, confusion, frustration. Every emotion fought for room inside me. But then a question rose, sharp and cold. If all of this was for Jenna, I asked, why did the receipt say the suit was pre-altered for someone 6'2"? He stopped breathing. I'm 6'2". His eyes flicked up to mine, and there it was. The truth, not the full truth, but enough. Enough to know there was something else beneath the surface. Something worse. Mark, I said slowly. Tell me why a suit my size was charged to my account at 2 in the morning. He shook his head rapidly. I can't say. Not yet. You'd better. He stood abruptly. You don't understand. If I talk, I'm done. And not just me. Who else? Everyone, he whispered. Before I could speak again, the front door opened. Footsteps. A woman's voice. Mark, we need to talk. It was Jenna. And the moment she stepped inside, she saw the bill on my phone. Her face changed instantly. And that's when the real story began. Jenna froze when she saw the screen in my hand. Her eyes flicked from the phone to Mark, then back to me, and in that small moment, barely 2 seconds, I watched her face cycle through confusion, recognition, fear, and something else I couldn't place. Something sharper. She didn't speak at first. Neither did we. The house felt too quiet, like even the air was waiting. Is that? She started, but her voice cracked. So she swallowed and tried again. Is that what I think it is? Mark took a step toward her. Jen, please. Let me explain. She held up a hand. Don't. Her voice was low, steady in a way that made Mark stop cold. She turned to me. How much? I looked at the number on the screen again, even though I'd memorized it. 4,000, from a luxury store. At 2:11 a.m., her shoulders sagged, not in relief, in resignation, like she already knew something I didn't. I told you, Mark whispered to her. I told you I'd fix it. She closed her eyes. You didn't fix anything. You made it worse. Mark's face fell. But I wasn't here to referee their marriage. I was here to understand why my account was blowing up with charges I never authorized. Jenna, I said calmly, I need to understand why a suit my size was purchased with my card. Mark said it was for you, but it wasn't. She said immediately, and the way she said it, flat, emotionless, made every hair on my arms rise. Mark looked like she'd stabbed him. Jen, she didn't look at him. It wasn't for me, she repeated. It wasn't for him either. I waited. I didn't breathe. The suit was for a man I've never met, she said quietly. Not directly, anyway. I felt Mark's shock before I saw it on his face. What are you talking about? He asked, voice rising. You told me she cut him off. I didn't want to tell you because you panic. You always panic. He stared at her like she'd slapped him. What man? She finally looked at him. The one who lent you the money. Mark's face twisted. That's not possible, he said. He lied, she said. Mark, he never gives money without expecting something back. You should have known that. I stepped forward. Who is he? They both went silent. Who? I repeated. Is he? Mark rubbed his forehead again. He calls himself Vic. The name meant nothing to me, but the way they reacted, like the syllables themselves were a threat, made my stomach tighten. He's not someone you say no to, Jenna whispered. I looked between them. You mean a loan shark? Jenna nodded slowly. Worse. I felt heat rise in my chest. And you dragged me into this? Mark shook his head quickly. I didn't drag you in. He did. How? I demanded. He said he needed collateral. Something to show I was serious. I told him I didn't have anything worth that much. Then he asked if I had family. I said yes. He asked who. I said your name without thinking. I stared at him in shock. You used me as collateral? It wasn't supposed to mean anything. He shouted, voice cracking. He said he just needed a name, someone stable, someone with a job, a house, someone he could trust. I thought it was paperwork. Just paperwork. I didn't know he'd start charging things to your account. I couldn't speak. My jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. And the suit? I managed. He chose it, Jenna said softly. Not me, not Mark. Him, he said. He needed something taken care of, something that required looking respectable, he said. Mark owed him one last favor, and then the debt would be done. I felt the room sway. What favor? They exchanged a look so tense, so frightened, that it felt like a physical blow. He never said, Mark whispered. But he told me the suit had to fit someone exactly 6'2", and, well, me. It wasn't subtle. I took a slow breath. Why me? Why would he drag me into your mess? Mark swallowed hard. Because he thinks you're predictable. Responsible. The kind of man who wouldn't ask questions if someone asked for help. The irony hit me like a truck. And what exactly did he want me to do? I asked. Jenna stepped closer, voice trembling. We don't know. He said he'd call when the time came. He said the suit was just the first step. And when was he planning to call? I asked. Mark looked down. He already tried. The house suddenly felt too small. What do you mean he tried? You didn't answer, Mark said. It was this morning. A number you didn't recognize. I thought back. I had missed a call around 6. I'd assumed it was spam. My voice hardened. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want him to think you were involved yet. Mark cried. If he thought you knew, he'd come sooner. He'd force the favor. But a sudden knock rattled the front door. All three of us turned toward it. Jenna's hand flew to her mouth. Mark whispered, No, 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 he's early. Another knock, firmer this time. I felt my pulse crash in my ears. Jenna grabbed Mark's arm. Don't answer, please, don't answer. But Mark looked at me with a kind of helpless resignation. He doesn't like waiting. The knocking stopped. Silence, then a voice calm, polite, terrifying, through the door. Mark, I believe we have an appointment, and I'd like to meet the man wearing the suit. My body went cold. He wasn't here for Mark. He was here for me. The voice through the door was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that doesn't ask for permission. The kind that assumes compliance. It slithered through the hallway and settled on my skin like a cold hand. Mark stood frozen beside the shoe rack, his face white as drywall. Jenna gripped his sleeve so tightly, her knuckles turned the color of bone. "Don't open it," she whispered. "Please, Mark. Don't." He didn't answer her. He didn't even blink. His eyes were fixed on the door, as if looking away might make whoever stood on the other side materialize behind him instead. I could hear my own pulse. Steady, heavy, relentless. I forced a breath into my lungs. It barely moved. "Who is he?" I asked, quietly. Mark didn't look at me. "If I tell you, you'll wish I hadn't." The doorbell rang. A single chime. Not impatient, not angry, just a reminder. Jenna whimpered. "He knows you're here." The voice returned, smooth as glass. "Mark, I'm not here for trouble. You know I keep my word. Let's finish our business, and I'll be on my way. But if you make me wait, well," a small pause. "I dislike waiting." Mark finally blinked, and when he did, his whole body seemed to collapse into itself. He looked at me like a drowning man, catching sight of someone holding a rope, but unsure whether he deserved rescue. "You can't talk to him," Jenna whispered to me. "Please, let Mark handle it." But everything in her voice said something else. "Mark can't handle it." I stepped forward slowly. "What does he want?" Mark dragged a trembling hand across his face. "He wants to meet you." "Why?" Mark hesitated too long. The truth cracked through his silence. He said the debt wasn't mine anymore. I felt the ground tilt. "I never borrowed money from him." "You didn't have to," Mark whispered. "He transferred the debt to you." My stomach twisted. "He can't do that." Jenna let out a weak, humorless laugh. "He can do anything he wants. That's the problem." A knock again. Softer this time, almost friendly. "Mark, should I come back later? Or are we talking now?" I met Mark's eyes. "Open it." Jenna's head snapped toward me. "No, don't involve yourself. Please, this isn't your fight." I didn't want it to be. God knows I didn't. But he already used my account. Bought a suit in my measurements. Called my phone. Showed up at my house. Whether I liked it or not, I was already involved. Mark swallowed hard. "If you see him, don't challenge him. Don't ask questions. Just let me talk." But something in his tone told me even he didn't believe his own advice. He took a breath, walked to the door, hesitated, then he put his hand on the knob and opened it 3 inches. The man outside leaned slightly to look in. He wasn't tall, wasn't muscular. He wasn't what I expected. Not some scarred, heavy-set enforcer with brass knuckles and a temper. He looked ordinary, almost painfully ordinary, mid-40s. Clean clothes, crisp haircut, friendly eyes. That was somehow worse. "Good morning," he said. Though it was nearly dinner time, his voice was soft, polite, like a doctor about to deliver difficult news. "Mark, you look pale." Mark forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Long day." The man nodded sympathetically. "They tend to be near the end." My skin prickled. Near the end of what? He looked over Mark's shoulder. Saw me. His eyes warmed instantly. Like he'd been hoping I'd appear. "You must be Daniel," he said. I stiffened. "And you are?" He smiled. "A facilitator." "For what?" I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped inside without waiting for permission. Not aggressive. No sudden movements. Just as if he were stepping into a hotel lobby. He glanced around, taking in the framed photos, the hallway lights, the faint smell of dinner in the kitchen. "Comfortable home," he said. "Settled. Predictable. I like that." Jenna moved behind Mark. He didn't move an inch, so the man said gently, "Are we doing this tonight, or are we still pretending we have more time?" "Doing what?" I asked. He looked at me as if amused. "The suit, Daniel." My throat tightened. "It's waiting at the store," he said. "Tailored for you. Paid for already. All we need is your cooperation." Mark choked out. "It wasn't supposed to be him. You said—" "I said many things," the man replied. "But circumstances change. You made choices. And those choices had consequences." Mark clenched his fists. "I can fix this. Don't bring him in." "You can't fix what you broke," the man said quietly. I stepped forward. "If this is about money, I'll pay." He shook his head. "It's not about money, not anymore." My pulse sped up. "Then, what is it about?" He met my eyes, and the warmth drained from his face, like someone flipped a switch. "Presence," he said. "Standing in a room you were never meant to stand in, asking a question you were instructed not to ask. Wearing a suit tailored for someone who won't be there." I didn't understand, at least not fully, but I knew enough to feel the danger radiating off him. "What room?" I whispered. He smiled. "You'll know when we arrive." Jenna's breath hitched. "Please," she whispered, tears forming. "Please don't do this." "He didn't do anything. That's precisely why he's perfect," the man said softly. "Perfect for what?" The man turned to me carefully, as if speaking to a student. "You're dependable, reliable. A man who follows instructions. A man who doesn't improvise. I like that. It makes tonight very simple." "Tonight," I repeated. He nodded. "Yes, we're leaving in an hour." Mark gasped. No, we're not ready." "You're not ready," the man corrected. "He is." I shook my head. "I'm not going anywhere." The man stepped closer. Not threateningly, just enough that I could see the faint scar near his jawline. Thin, white, deliberate. "Daniel," he said quietly, "if you refuse, do you know what happens to the person who owes me?" Mark went rigid. Jenna's tears finally fell. I felt my breath catch. "No," I said. "Not them. Leave them out of this." He tilted his head. "Then come with me. Wear the suit. Stand where I tell you to stand. Say nothing. 5 minutes. And you walk away a free man." "And if I don't?" I asked. He didn't blink. "Then I collect." "And what does collecting mean?" This time he smiled in a way that made the room feel colder. "It means Mark loses something he can't replace." Mark staggered backward, gripping the wall. "Daniel," he whispered, voice cracking. Please just go with him." I stared at Mark, at Jenna, at the man who somehow held all of our futures in his pocket. And then the man said something that made my entire world tilt. "The person you're replacing, Daniel, he died last week." I froze. "Replacing?" He nodded. "You have his measurements. Same shoulders, same height, same posture. You're perfect." "For what?" I whispered. The man's smile widened just slightly. "For a meeting," he said. "A meeting where your face will buy us exactly 5 minutes." I swallowed. "Buy you time for what?" He leaned in. "For a death," he whispered. The room seemed to tilt when he said it. For a death. Not metaphorical. Not hinted. He said it plainly, like discussing the weather. My mouth went dry. Mark collapsed onto the bench, burying his face in his hands. Jenna clutched her chest, whispering something I couldn't hear. The man, this facilitator, simply adjusted his cuff, as if the conversation had not just shifted into something monstrous. "Whose death?" I asked, voice shaking, despite my effort to keep it steady. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked around my home, studying the photos on the wall, my wedding picture, some old family portraits, a framed shot of my wife and me on our 20th anniversary. He stopped at that one, tilting his head. "You're loyal," he said softly. "That's good. Loyalty is currency." I stepped closer. "Whose death?" He turned calmly. "A man who made promises and broke every single one of them. A man who thought he was smarter than the people he owed. A man who ran. "That's not my problem," I said. "It became your problem when your brother-in-law used your name," he replied. "His debt transferred to you. I didn't pick you out of malice. I picked you because you fit the requirements." "What requirements?" I pressed. He pointed to my shoulders, posture, build, height. The ability to walk into a room without causing concern. My heart hammered. A room where someone is going to die. He finally met my eyes. "You misunderstand. You are not there to kill anyone. You are a placeholder, a distraction, a silhouette filling a role. 5 minutes of presence. Nothing more." I shook my head. "This is insane." The man sighed as if I were a slow student. "Daniel, I have no interest in harming you, but I do have interest in maintaining the order of my business. If I do not collect what is owed, I lose power, and if I lose power, I lose safety. Do you understand?" I didn't answer. "Mark gave me your name," he continued, "and your address, and your stability. He offered you as collateral, without knowing what that truly meant, and now the debt has matured." Mark groaned into his palms. "I didn't know. I didn't know he'd do this." "Yes, you did," Jenna whispered sharply. "You just didn't want to believe it." The man glanced at her, expression unreadable. He knew enough. Then he stepped so close to me that I could feel the warmth radiating off his coat. "You have 1 hour," he said quietly. "Then we leave." "What if I call the police?" I asked. He chuckled. Not loudly, not mockingly. Worse, it was almost sympathetic. "Please do," he said. "Tell them what? That a man purchased a suit in your size. That your brother-in-law made poor financial decisions? That I knocked on your door and asked for a meeting? You have no evidence, Daniel. And even if you did, the ones who matter already know the rules." "The rules," I repeated. "What rules?" He tapped the door frame lightly before replying. "The rules that keep certain people alive." Jenna's breath hitched. Mark whispered, "Daniel, please just go. Please." I felt my anger spike. "You put me in this." Mark broke, shoulders shaking, voice cracking. I know. And I'm sorry. I didn't think he'd drag you in. I thought I could fix it before you ever knew. I'm sorry." His apology didn't fix anything. It didn't undo the $4,000 suit. It didn't erase the debt transferred into my lap. It didn't remove the man now standing in my hallway, calmly telling me I had an hour before walking into some unknown meeting where my face was required. I turned to the facilitator. "Tell me exactly what you want from me." He shrugged slightly. "You enter a room. You sit. You do not speak. You do not look at anyone directly. You simply exist where another man once sat. His absence would raise suspicion. Your presence delays it, that is all. And afterward, you go home," he said. "No strings, no repercussions, debt cleared. And if something goes wrong, that depends on what you mean by wrong." His answers were too smooth, too well practiced. This wasn't his first time manufacturing obedience. Jenna stepped beside me suddenly. "What happens if he refuses?" He didn't turn to her. His eyes stayed on me. "He won't refuse. I'm asking, what happens?" She said again, louder. He sighed. "Then I take something from Mark instead." "What does that mean?" she demanded. He finally looked at her, expression still calm, but colder now. "When someone owes me, they owe me. When they offer collateral, I accept it. If their collateral refuses to cooperate, then the original debtor suffers instead. Loss is the only language some men understand." Mark crumpled further, shaking his head violently. "No," he murmured. "Please, not Jenna. Not me. I'll do anything. Just not them." "Anything?" the man repeated softly. "Mark, you can barely manage the responsibilities you already carry. You're not built to do what I need tonight. Daniel is." I felt the weight of it, crushing, heavy. I took a breath. Where is this meeting? The man smiled faintly. I'll tell you when we drive. I'm not going without information. I snapped. His smile didn't falter. You'll know enough when you need to know it. I need to know now. He stepped closer until he was inches from my face. If you needed to know now, he whispered. You would. Something in my chest tightened. Fear, yes, but also something else. Resolve. A life lived being steady and dependable, suddenly turning into a liability. Give me 1 hour, I said. You told me I had one. Let me use it. He studied me for a beat, then nodded. Once, 1 hour. At 6 o'clock we leave. He walked toward the door, but before he stepped outside, he turned back. Wear the suit, he said. They expect him, not you. The door shut behind him with a soft click. Silence. Mark collapsed completely, sliding down the wall until he hit the floor. Jenna dropped beside him, gripping his arm, but he looked past her, straight at me. Daniel, he choked. I'm so sorry, I didn't think it would get this far. I stared at the closed door, my pulse roaring in my ears. Tell me everything, I said. No more secrets. No more half-truths. What exactly did you get us into? Mark lifted his head, eyes reddening, and then he told me something I wasn't prepared for. The man you're replacing, he didn't just die last week. He was murdered, and he knew he was going to die because he left a message. A message with your name on it. For a long moment, I didn't understand the words coming out of Mark's mouth. A message with my name on it? My brain tried to rearrange the sentence into something logical, something that fit into the bounds of reality I understood, but nothing aligned. What do you mean? I finally asked. He left a message with my name on it. Mark wiped his face with the heel of his hand. I didn't want to tell you unless I had to. I prayed I wouldn't have to. Jenna squeezed his arm. Mark, he deserves to know everything now. He nodded shakily, then looked up at me with a guilt so raw it almost made me step back. The man who died, his name was Henry. He paused. He was my neighbor when I was a kid. That wasn't what I expected. Your neighbor? He moved away years ago, Mark said. Then out of nowhere, last month, he reached out to me, said he remembered me, remembered my family, said he heard I was going through a hard time and wanted to help, and you believed him. Mark winced. I was desperate. I'd lost my job. The bills were piling up. Jenna was working double shifts. I thought maybe someone finally wanted to help without strings. Jenna shook her head painfully. I told you it was too good to be true. I know, Mark whispered. I crossed my arms. So he gave you money? Not at first, Mark said. At first he just talked. He acted friendly, asked questions. Subtle things: where I lived, what family I still had, who was doing well, who wasn't. I didn't think anything of it. A cold knot formed in my stomach. He was gathering information. Mark nodded. And then he offered me a loan, small at first. 500, no interest. Then more, and by the time I realized what he really wanted, it was too late, Jenna finished. But I still don't understand the message, I said. Why would he leave something with my name on it? He didn't even know me. Mark's voice dropped to a whisper. He knew everything about you. My heart stumbled. He knew you lived in this house, Mark said. Knew you were stable, responsible. Never missed a bill in your life. Knew you had no criminal history, no bad debts, nothing to make anyone suspicious if you placed him for a few minutes. I felt a chill crawl along my spine. Why me? There must have been others who fit that description. Mark shook his head. No. He said your face was the right shape. I blinked. My face? Your build, your hair color, your posture, Mark said. He said you'd blend in better than anyone else he'd seen. Blend in where? I demanded. Mark hesitated. Into a group Henry was involved with. Jenna closed her eyes. A group he shouldn't have been near. I could feel the tension tightening around us like a rope. What kind of group? Mark swallowed. A group that deals with money, yes, but not publicly, and not legally. Henry was supposed to sit in on a meeting with people much higher up the chain than the facilitator. He owed them a report, and he knew he wasn't going to survive giving it. I stared at him, unable to speak. So before he died, Mark whispered. He recorded a message, not for the police, not for his family, for me. What did it say? I asked. I'll show you. He pulled out his phone with trembling hands. His thumb hovered. Before he opened his voice messages, one file, one timestamp. 3 days old. He pressed play. The voice was rough, distorted by stress. Mail. Mark. If you're hearing this, they know. I can't get out. They moved up the meeting. I froze. I need someone to take my place, the voice rasped. Just long enough. 5 minutes, that's all. But it can't be you. You're not built like me. You don't walk like me. They'd know. Static. A breath. A horrible cough. There's someone else, Henry's voice continued. Weaker. Someone with the same height, same shoulders, same face structure. I saw him once. At your wife's birthday barbecue. Daniel. That's his name. Daniel. Something. I felt my blood run cold. He'd fit. They'd believe it. For a moment. And that moment could save. Static swallowed the rest. The recording ended. The room felt hollow, like the world had drained out of it. I tried to speak, but my throat didn't work. Why? I finally said, would Henry think I'd ever help him? Mark looked defeated. He didn't think you'd help him. He thought you'd help me, Jenna whispered. He thought Mark would beg you. And he was right. I took a step back. Then another. My legs felt unsteady. Henry had chosen me not because he knew me, but because I matched a silhouette, a physical resemblance. A shape that could fill space where he couldn't anymore. He gambled with my life, and Mark let him. I sank into a chair, breathing hard. This is insane. It's worse than insane, Jenna said. Henry didn't just owe money, he was spying for them. Running errands, delivering messages. And then he tried to leave. Mark's voice cracked, and no one leaves. I rubbed my face. So the facilitator expects me to take Henry's seat. Buy them 5 minutes, and just walk away. That's the plan. Mark said, 5 minutes, that's it. They won't know you're not him if you stay silent, unless they do. I snapped. What then? Mark didn't answer. Jenna did. Then you die, she said quietly. The words echoed in the room like a dropped stone. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, trying to breathe. But the air felt tight, the walls felt close, and time suddenly felt like a knife at my throat. I looked at Mark. You destroyed my life, I whispered. He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He just bowed his head and cried. The clock on the wall ticked. 5:07 p.m., 53 minutes until 6. 53 minutes until I walked into a meeting as a dead man's replacement. 53 minutes until I gambled my life to save the man who'd thrown me into hell. And then another thought hit me. Sharp, final, terrifying. Does the facilitator know Henry left a message? I asked. Mark's breath stopped. Jenna's face drained of color. I looked toward the front door. If he didn't know before, he would soon. The second the question left my mouth, does the facilitator know Henry left a message? The air in the room shifted, not physically, emotionally. Like some invisible curtain had been pulled back, and we were suddenly standing exposed under a harsher light. Mark lifted his head slowly, his eyes wide and glassy. Daniel, you can't tell him. You can't. Jenna grabbed his arm. He doesn't need to know if he finds out Henry recorded anything. She didn't finish. She didn't have to. The implication was clear. Anyone connected to that recording would vanish. But I wasn't thinking about them, or even myself in that moment. I was thinking about why Henry had left the message in the first place. He knew death was coming. He knew he was being replaced or silenced. And still, he wanted Mark to hear it. Henry said he saw me at the barbecue. I murmured, trying to steady my breathing. That was 2 years ago. Mark nodded shakily. He recognized you instantly. He mentioned you more than once. More than once? I repeated. Mark hesitated. He said, "You had the kind of presence people don't question." That caught me off guard. Presence? I'm an accountant. Jenna gave me a sad, tired look. That's exactly why, Daniel. You're calm, steady. You don't draw attention. That's what those people need. Someone who fades. I didn't know what to say. The entire situation felt surreal, like I'd stepped into somebody else's nightmare and was being told to play a role I never auditioned for. The wall clock ticked again. 5:13 p.m. The seconds suddenly felt violent. Mark wiped his eyes. The facilitator can't know about the recording. If he even suspects Henry shared anything, he'll assume you heard more than you did. And then Jenna whispered, "He'll eliminate you before you even get into the car." My blood went cold. The worst part? I believed her. I sat up straighter. Where is the message now? Mark held his phone out like it was a live wire. "Here, delete it," I said. Both of them jerked. "Daniel," Jenna began. "Delete it," I repeated. "If he takes your phone or checks anything, that recording is a death sentence. For all of us." Mark stared at the phone, his thumb hovering. He'd saved it. He'd listened to it. He'd held on to it because it felt like a lifeline, a message from a dying man desperate to undo the damage he'd done. But it wasn't a lifeline. It was a fuse. Trembling, he finally tapped the screen. The message vanished. And then he held his phone against his chest. Eyes wet. "It's gone." I exhaled. But it wasn't relief. Just a necessary step in a chain of events I couldn't control. Jenna looked at me. "What are you going to do?" I didn't answer right away, because I didn't know. My conscience and my survival instinct were fighting each other like two animals locked in a small cage. "I have to go," I said quietly. "If I don't, he'll kill Mark." Mark looked like someone had punched him. "I'm so sorry." "Stop," I said. "No more apologies. They don't help." He closed his mouth. Jenna swallowed. "If you're going, we need to prepare you." "Prepare me how?" I asked. She hesitated. "Henry didn't just look like you, he moved like you. He spoke like you. When he spoke at all, he had a quiet confidence. You need to mimic that." I gave her a look. "You want me to act?" "Yes," she said firmly. "Because if you act wrong, too nervous, too bold, too confused, they'll know immediately." "And then what?" I demanded. She didn't answer. Mark stood shakily. "I'll help. I spent more time with Henry. I know his habits, his posture, his pace." I stared at him. "You want to train me to impersonate a dead man in under an hour?" Mark flinched, but nodded. "It's all we've got." My instinct told me to reject the whole idea. B.O. To tell the facilitator to go to hell. To take my wife and leave the house, call the police, go to a hotel, anything but this. But logic, cold and merciless, whispered the truth. Police couldn't stop a man like him. Running would make things worse. Time was already gone. I rubbed my temples. "Fine. Tell me what I need to know." Mark exhaled in shaky relief. Henry had a specific walk, shoulders forward like he was thinking ahead of his feet. When he sat, he leaned slightly back, not forward. And he always kept his hands still. Never fidgeted. I nodded slowly. "And he didn't greet people," Mark added. "He let them greet him first." Jenna stepped in, and his eyes, he never held eye contact too long. Just long enough to acknowledge, then glance away. It made him seem controlled. The more they described him, the more unsettling it became. I was no actor. I was no criminal. Yet here I was, rehearsing the mannerisms of a dead man so I could walk into a room full of people who murdered him. "That's enough," I finally said. "I'll remember." Mark hesitated. "There's one more thing." I looked at him. "He had a scar," Mark said softly. "On his left hand, a thin line near the thumb. It was small, but noticeable." "And you're telling me this now?" I snapped. Mark held up his hands defensively. "I didn't know it would matter until now." Jenna stepped between us. "Daniel, you can hide your hand. Keep it in a pocket, or fold your arms." I paced the hallway, trying to breathe through the panic building inside my chest. It felt like I was preparing for an exam where failure meant death, not just for me but for the people I cared about. My mind raced. The facilitator said, "You fit the silhouette. You buy us 5 minutes. For a death. A death. Not mine, or not intentionally mine. Someone else's. Someone who was supposed to meet Henry. Someone powerful enough that Henry's absence would cause suspicion." I turned back to them. "Who was Henry reporting to?" "Do you know?" Mark bit his lip. "A man named Calder. I never met him, but Henry said Calder wasn't the top. Just a rung, but a dangerous one." "And tonight's meeting, it's with Calder?" "I think so," Mark said. "But I'm not sure." I leaned against the wall. The clock chimed softly. 5:28 p.m. 32 minutes until 6. 32 minutes until I stepped into the unknown. A sound at the front door made us all freeze. A soft scrape, a whisper of movement, then silence. Jenna's hand flew to her mouth. "Did he come back?" she whispered. I moved toward the door cautiously. Another sound. Something subtle, like paper sliding against wood. I opened the door slowly. No one stood there, but on the welcome mat lay an envelope. My name written on the front. Just my name. No stamp. No return address. I bent down, lifted it, and opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed. Short. Chilling. "Do not lie to me again." No signature. No explanation. Except I already understood. He knew something. And he was warning me. I stepped back inside, locking the door behind me. Mark whispered, "Daniel, what does it say?" I looked at him, and for the first time I saw real fear, not for himself, but for me. "It says," I answered quietly, "that someone has already lied." Jenna's voice cracked. "He knows about the message." I shook my head. "No, not necessarily. But he knows something is off." Mark sagged. "What do we do?" I folded the paper. "We stop making mistakes," I said, "and we finish this." But inside, something darker whispered. This wasn't about fulfilling a dead man's role. This was about surviving a living one. The envelope felt heavier than paper should feel. I kept staring at it even after I folded it, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less threatening. But they didn't. They stayed there. Simple, cold, final. "Do not lie to me again." Mark sank onto the nearest chair, holding his head like he was trying to keep it from splitting open. Jenna hovered beside him, her hands shaking so badly she kept clenching them into fists to stop it. "Daniel," she whispered. He knows. "No," I said carefully. "He suspects." Mark's voice cracked. "That's worse. If he suspects, he tests, and if he tests, he'll know," Jenna finished. Tears gathering again. I didn't want to hear the rest. The implication hung in the air like smoke. I unfolded the note again, studying it. It was typed, perfectly aligned. No handwriting, no fingerprint smudges. Whoever placed it on my doorstep didn't want to be tracked. "Someone was watching," I said quietly. "Listening, maybe both. And if he thinks you're hiding something..." Mark's voice trailed off as though the words were too sharp to say aloud. I looked around my home. The kitchen I built cabinets for myself. The living room where my wife and I spent countless quiet evenings. The hallway filled with photos of a life built slowly, carefully. Suddenly, it all felt fragile, like a house of cards balanced on a table someone else controlled. "You said he doesn't like waiting," I murmured. Mark nodded. "So he won't wait for a lie either." Jenna's face tightened. "What exactly did we lie about?" I pointed to the door, deleting the message. "That wasn't a lie," Mark said quickly. "We." "Not the deletion," I interrupted. The fact that a message existed at all, silence fell. It was obvious now the facilitator didn't know what Henry had recorded, but he knew Henry had recorded something, and he assumed someone, maybe Mark, maybe me, was hiding it. He wasn't warning us about the future. He was warning us about now. I breathed out slowly. "It means we have to be perfect tonight." Mark's hands trembled uncontrollably. "Daniel, they'll kill you if you mess up. And they'll kill you if I don't go," I said. "So either way, someone dies unless I buy us those 5 minutes." I didn't say what else I was thinking, that maybe they'd kill me afterward anyway. Some debts aren't meant to be cleared. Jenna paced the hallway, clutching her elbows. "Then you need to blend in, completely. You need to watch every breath you take, every step, every blink." Mark stood suddenly. "You need the suit." We all looked at him. The facilitator said, "It's waiting at the store." Mark continued, swallowing. "And if you show up not wearing it, they'll know you're not Henry." Jenna finished. I checked the time. 5:34 p.m. 26 minutes until 6. I nodded. "Where's the store?" Mark pointed toward the main road. 15 minutes away. "If we leave now?" "No," Jenna said sharply. "You can't go alone, not after that note." Mark hesitated. "But if I go with him, you're in danger too," she said. "And the facilitator knows you're unpredictable. He might assume you're going to warn someone." "What do you suggest?" I asked. Jenna looked at me, and for the first time since this nightmare began, there was steel in her voice. "I'm going with you." Mark's eyes widened. "Jenna, no. He's less likely to do something if I'm there," she insisted. "Women make him cautious." "That's not true," Mark snapped. "It is," she said. "You've seen how he behaves. He lowers his voice. He softens his tone. He doesn't threaten directly. He thinks women are weak. That's leverage." I didn't love the idea, but she wasn't wrong. The facilitator did have a different demeanor around her. "Fine," I said. "We go together. We buy the suit. We come back. Then I leave with him at 6. Jenna grabbed her coat. "Let's go." Mark stood shakily and reached for her wrist. "Please, be careful." She touched his cheek gently. "I'll come back." The way she said it, quiet, tender, but laced with fear, hit me harder than anything else tonight. We stepped outside. The evening was cold, the sky bleeding into dusk. The street looked normal, almost disappointingly so. Not a soul in sight. No suspicious cars, no shadows lurking. Just a neighborhood unaware that a single wrong move tonight might get someone killed. As I locked the front door, Jenna stared at the envelope still in my hand. "Leave it," she said softly. "We can't bring anything that ties us to suspicion." I nodded and shoved it under the welcome mat. A futile gesture, maybe, but symbolic. I was leaving normalcy behind anyway. We walked to my car. I unlocked it, and Jenna slid into the passenger seat. As I started the engine, she said, "Daniel, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why are you doing this?" Her voice was small. "Why not run? Why not fight back? Why not let Mark take responsibility?" I kept my hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead. "Because that man doesn't negotiate," I said softly. "And because Mark is family, even when he's stupid, reckless and wrong. And because if someone has to take the hit tonight, it's better me than them." She stared at me for a long moment, then turned her gaze toward the windshield. "You're a better man than he deserves," she whispered. I didn't answer. We drove in silence. The store sat on the edge of town, high-end, minimalist, the kind of place where no price tags are displayed, because if you have to ask, you don't belong inside. The lights were still on. As we pulled into the parking lot, Jenna grabbed my arm. Hard. "Daniel," she said, voice urgent, "there's something I didn't tell you." I looked at her sharply. "What?" She swallowed. "Henry wasn't just spying for that group." "What was he doing?" I asked. Pulse quickening. He was gathering information on someone specific. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. "Who?" I demanded. She looked at me, not at the store, not at the suit, not at the situation we'd been forced into. At me. "You," she whispered. "He was gathering information on you." The fog settled over my mind. "Why?" I asked. Jenna wiped a tear. "Because they asked him to." My stomach tightened. "Who's they?" She hesitated, fear flashing in her eyes. "The people you're meeting tonight," she said. "They wanted to know everything about you long before Henry died." I stared at her, unable to blink. "Daniel," she whispered. "This wasn't an accident. You weren't chosen at random. You were chosen on purpose." And then, as if summoned by the words, a black sedan slid quietly into the parking lot and stopped behind my car. I didn't need to see the driver to know who had arrived. My hour was up. The black sedan eased into the parking lot without sound, rolling to a stop behind my car like it had been following us the entire time. The headlights dimmed, but the engine kept humming, steady, patient, deliberate. Jenna inhaled sharply, her fingers tightening around my sleeve. "He's early," she whispered. I didn't answer. My mind was still caught on her last sentence. "You weren't chosen at random. You were chosen on purpose." Before I could speak, the rear door of the sedan opened, and the facilitator stepped out, calm as ever, smoothing his coat, as if arriving fashionably late to a dinner party. He glanced around the lot, spotted us instantly, and offered the faintest smile, not warm, not threatening, just knowing. He walked toward us with unhurried steps, each one measured, each one designed to remind us he had total control over the evening, the timing, and us. "Daniel," he said pleasantly, tapping on my window. "You're early." "That shows initiative," Jenna whispered urgently. "Don't get out yet. Please don't." But I already had. I opened the door slowly, stepping into the chill air. If I stayed seated, I'd look defiant. If I got out too fast, I'd look panicked. So I chose steady, controlled, neutral. Like Henry. The facilitator studied me with approving interest. "You're learning," he said. "Good. That will matter." Jenna exited the car more cautiously. His eyes flicked to her, offering a polite nod. "Mrs. Collins." She stiffened. "That's not my name." He smiled, as though she'd made a charming joke. Perhaps not." Jenna's hands curled at her sides. He turned back to me. "I see you've come for the suit." "Yes," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I want to be prepared." "Excellent," he replied. "Preparation is the difference between survival and inconvenience." His pause before the last word wasn't long, but it was enough to send a cold ripple down my spine. Without waiting for permission, he gestured toward the store entrance. "Shall we?" Jenna stepped closer to me, like a shadow refusing to leave. "Why are you here early?" she asked. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Because early arrivals tell me more about a man than punctual ones." "And what does coming early tell you about Daniel?" She pressed. He looked at her for a long, unsettling moment before answering. "That he's begun to accept his role." My jaw tightened. "I'm not accepting anything. I'm doing what I have to do." "Semantics," he murmured. He walked toward the store, expecting us to follow, and we did, because not following wasn't a real option anymore. Inside, The shop was nearly empty. A single clerk stood at the counter, too still, too poised, watching us with the faintest flicker of recognition. When she saw the facilitator, she straightened. "It's ready," she said quietly, and vanished into the back room. Jenna leaned close to me. "Daniel, are you okay?" "No," I said honestly, "but I'm here." Before she could respond, the clerk returned carrying a garment bag, sleek, black, expensive looking. She held it out to me with both hands, but kept her eyes lowered. "For him," she said to the facilitator. He nodded. "Excellent. Daniel, go try it on." I hesitated. "Here?" "Yes," he said, as if explaining it to a child. "Now." The clerk led me to the fitting room. Jenna tried to follow, but the facilitator lifted a hand. "No, he goes alone." Jenna froze, then whispered to me, "I'll be right here. I won't go anywhere." I offered a nod, forced though it was, and stepped into the fitting room. The moment the door closed, silence pressed in around me. I unzipped the garment bag. The suit inside was perfect. Too perfect. Black, tailored, sharp, the kind of suit worn by men who walk into rooms where decisions are made and lives end. When I slid it on, it fit like it had been cut from me rather than for me. Henry's measurements. Henry's role. Henry's death echoing across my shoulders. When I stepped out, Jenna gasped softly, not in admiration, in fear. "You look exactly like him," she whispered. The facilitator clasped his hands together, pleased. "Yes, that will do beautifully." I swallowed hard. "You said this meeting lasts 5 minutes. It does. And during that time," I said, measuring each word, "no one touches me. No one speaks to me. No one expects anything from me except silence and presence." "That is correct." I took a slow breath. "Then tell me what Henry was supposed to do afterward." The facilitator's expression didn't change. Walk away to where? To safety," he said simply. It was a lie. I could hear it. He didn't blink when he lied. That was how I knew. "What really happened to him?" I asked. He considered me for a moment. "He made a mistake." "What mistake?" "He asked a question," the facilitator said quietly. "Just one. At the wrong time." My pulse thudded. "And tonight," he continued, "you will not repeat his mistake." I nodded slowly. Behind him, Jenna was pale, trembling, staring at me like she wanted to grab my hand and pull me out of the building and out of this life. "Now," the facilitator said, checking his watch, "we should go. We are expected." He walked toward the entrance, but before I could take a step, Jenna grabbed my arm, pulling me close enough that only I could hear. "Daniel," she whispered shakily. "There's one more thing." I felt my stomach twist. "Please don't say that." "I have to," she said. "Because you need to know the truth." "What truth?" Her eyes filled. "Henry didn't accidentally leave a message for Mark." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "He left it for you." I froze. "He didn't know me." He knew enough," she said quietly. "He asked about you months ago. He knew your name. He knew your house. He knew your habits. Mark thought Henry was trying to help him. But I think Henry was trying to warn you." "Warn me," I whispered. "About what?" Her voice cracked. "That you weren't stepping into his role." She swallowed. "You were stepping into his place." I stared at her, not understanding, and then, she whispered, the words that made my knees weaken. "Daniel, the man they want gone. The one Henry was meant to replace wasn't some stranger." She looked into my eyes. "They were planning to eliminate you." Before I could react, before I could even breathe, the facilitator called over his shoulder, "Daniel, it's time." And I realized the truth. I wasn't replacing a dead man. I was stepping into a death planned for me all along. When Jenna's words finally sank in, It felt like the air collapsed in my lungs. They weren't pulling me into Henry's death. They were pulling me into my own. The facilitator stood by the door, one hand on the glass, waiting with that patient, unnerving smile carved across his face. He wasn't rushing. Predators don't rush. They enjoy the moment their prey realizes the truth. "Daniel," he repeated gently. "It's time," but Jenna still had her hand wrapped around my arm, her nails pressing through the fabric. "You can't go," she whispered. "Not now, not with what I told you. Don't take another step." My voice came out rough, thin. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" She shook her head helplessly. "I didn't know for sure until now. Until the envelope, the message from Henry. The way the facilitator kept looking at you. Daniel, everything points to one thing. You're not a stand-in. You're a target." The room tilted as the reality pressed harder. "Are you finished?" The facilitator asked, still smiling, still polite, still deadly. "It's rude to keep important people waiting." I swallowed hard. If I'm the one they want dead, why involve me at all? Why not kill me here? Why a meeting? His smile didn't falter. Optics, ritual, symbolism. People at that level require ceremony. A death without witnesses has no meaning. A death in the right room, in the right chair, at the right time. Now that has meaning, Jenna muttered. "They're animals." "No," the facilitator said calmly. "Animals kill for survival. Men kill for structure. Order, continuity." I stepped backward, barely breathing. "Then Henry wasn't the target." "Oh, Henry was a target," he said casually. "But only because he wouldn't deliver you." My blood froze. "He was supposed to guide you onto the path," the facilitator continued. "Encourage you, position you, shape the circumstances. Instead, he got skittish, erratic. He ran, and when a man like Henry runs, everyone involved pays a price." "So you murdered him," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "We didn't murder him. We allowed the consequences of his decisions to catch up." "That's murder," Jenna snapped. He tilted his head. "If it comforts you to name it so, feel free." I clenched my fists. I wanted to strike him. But even the thought felt dangerous, as if he could sense it forming. "Let me ask you something," I said. "Why do they want me dead? What did I ever do?" "Oh," he breathed, stepping closer. "That's the interesting part." He leaned in so close I felt the cold precision in his voice. "You don't need to do anything to be useful dead." Jenna made a strangled sound. He continued, "Your death is a gift, a gesture, a debt payment between men far above your reach. You are a name on a file that makes a very inconvenient problem. Disappear." I forced words out, each one jagged. "What problem?" "That," he said, straightening, "is not your concern. And if I refuse to go with you," something dark flickered behind his pleasant demeanor, "then Mark dies. And after him, well, accidents happen." Mark wasn't here, but the weight of his name felt crushing. Jenna stepped between us. "Why Daniel? Why him specifically? Out of millions of people, you went after him." The facilitator regarded her with mild curiosity. "Because he's predictable," he said. "Because he values family. Because he steps in when others fall short. Because if someone he loves is threatened, he will walk willingly into places wiser men avoid." He smiled softly. "And because the man who requested the death knows him." My breath stuttered. "Who?" I asked. "Who requested it?" "Not tonight," the facilitator said gently. "Tonight, you play your part. Tomorrow, well, tomorrow isn't yours to worry about." I looked at Jenna. Her eyes shone with tears, but behind them, something fierce, something resolute. "Daniel," she whispered. "Don't go." "I have to," I whispered back. "If I don't, Mark dies. And if you do," she choked. I looked down. "I die." The truth sat between us, like a living thing. Jenna trembled. "There has to be another way." "There is no other way," the facilitator said, stepping aside and gesturing toward the door. "Come now. They are expecting you." I inhaled, then exhaled. Slow, heavy, and I walked. Jenna grabbed my sleeve desperately. "Daniel, please, don't walk away from me." I turned to her. "You told me something important," I said softly. "They wanted me long before Henry died. That means someone close to me gave them my name." Her eyes widened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying this isn't just Henry, or the facilitator, or Calder. Someone else, someone I know, wanted me gone." Jenna froze. "Daniel, please don't say that." "There's no other explanation," I whispered. "Someone fed them information about me. Someone close, someone who knew my routines, my habits, my height, someone who'd seen me at a barbecue." Jenna's face drained of color. "Mark," she whispered. I shook my head. "No. Mark is reckless, stupid, desperate. But he's not malicious." "Then who?" she asked. I stared at the facilitator. He smiled knowingly, too knowingly, and it struck me hard, cold, horrifying. The facilitator had said earlier, "A man who requested the death knows him. Not knows of him, not heard of him, knows him." My chest tightened. "So it wasn't random," I said quietly. "This goes deeper." "Oh yes," the facilitator murmured. "Much deeper." Jenna squeezed my wrist. "Daniel, who could want you gone?" I swallowed. "There's only one possibility." Before she could respond, the facilitator opened the car door with a soft click. "Daniel," he said. "Your seat is waiting." Jenna's voice broke. "Daniel." "Don't get in that car." I hesitated. For the first time, the facilitator's calm expression shifted. Just a fraction, a tightening at the jaw, a faint narrowing of the eyes. "Get in," he repeated. Not a request, a command. I looked at Jenna one last time. Mindy shook her head. Desperate. "Daniel, don't go. We'll figure something out." "Don't do this." My voice trembled. "If I don't go, Mark dies. If I go, maybe I can learn who's behind all of this. And if you die," I forced a faint, fragile smile, "then at least we'll know the truth." The facilitator gestured impatiently. I stepped forward. Jenna reached out, fingers grazing my sleeve. But I slipped from her grip and lowered myself into the back seat of the sedan. The door shut behind me. The lock clicked. The facilitator slid into the front passenger seat. "Good," he said softly. "Now the real work begins." The engine hummed. The car rolled forward, and Jenna's voice, small, breaking, faded behind us. "Daniel, don't leave me." The door locked with that soft, final click, the kind that didn't need to be loud to feel permanent. The sedan began to roll forward, smooth and silent, and Jenna's voice, thin, trembling, faded behind me like someone calling from a different lifetime. "Daniel, don't leave me." I closed my eyes for a moment. I didn't trust myself to look back. The car's interior smelled faintly of leather and something colder underneath, like rain on steel. The facilitator sat in the front passenger seat, hands resting neatly in his lap, staring straight ahead as though the road itself were already answering his questions. "Good," he said softly. "Accepting your place makes this cleaner for everyone." I swallowed. "Where are we going?" "A meeting," he replied. "You already know that." "And after the meeting?" He smiled, but didn't turn. "After that, depends on how convincing you are." I leaned forward slightly. "You said if I sit, stay silent and leave when told it ends." "Yes, but Henry stayed silent." I reminded him. His smile widened just enough to reveal the truth. "I already feared. Henry was not you." The road stretched ahead. I tried to read the signs, but the driver took an exit I didn't recognize. A road that slipped behind a row of warehouses, their windows dark, their structures hulking like sleeping beasts. "You're taking me somewhere isolated," I said quietly. "Of course," he replied. "Power prefers privacy." My heart beat, thudded in my ears. I thought about Jenna, about Mark, about the truth, she whispered. "Someone who knew you wanted you dead? Who requested this?" I asked. "Tell me. You'll meet him soon enough. I want to know before I walk into that room." He finally turned, studying me with a calm, polite curiosity, like a doctor deciding whether to tell a patient the truth or let the test results speak for themselves. "Why?" he asked. "Why does the name matter? Death feels the same regardless of who signs the order." "Because," I said, "I deserve to know who betrayed me." The facilitator's eyes softened almost sympathetically. "You think this is a betrayal?" he asked gently. "Daniel, betrayal requires intimacy, care, trust." He leaned slightly closer. This was business. The car slowed, turning through a gate that opened by itself. Someone watching, someone expecting us. The interior lights of a long warehouse flickered on as the car approached, revealing a space larger than I imagined. A single table sat in the middle. 2 chairs, 1 lamp, a stage set for a death that was supposed to look ceremonial. The sedan stopped. The facilitator opened his door. "Come," he said. "It's time." I stepped out. The air smelled like cold metal and dust. My shoes echoed sharply on the concrete floor. The lamp cast a circle of yellow light, but everything beyond it felt swallowed in shadow. "Sit," he instructed. I sat. "Do not speak," he reminded me. "Do not look up unless spoken to. Do not move unless told." I placed a hand on my shoulder, light, almost gentle, and then stepped back. A door at the far end of the warehouse creaked open. Footsteps approached, measured. Familiar. And then I saw him step into the light. My breath left my lungs. It was Mark. But not the Mark who cried in my hallway. Not the Mark who begged me to save him. This Mark stood straighter, colder, like a man shedding a mask he'd worn too long. He stopped a few feet in front of me. "Daniel," he said softly. "I'm glad you came." I stared at him. I couldn't speak. But even if I had been allowed to, I wouldn't have found the words. The facilitator stood behind him, hands clasped neatly. "You asked who ordered the death," he said. "Well, here he is." I shook my head slowly. "No, not possible. Not Mark." Mark sighed, almost disappointed. "I didn't want it to be you," he said. "Not at first." My pulse hammered. "But you kept showing up in places you weren't supposed to, helping when no one asked. Fixing things quietly, making me look small. Look weak." He stepped closer. "You think I didn't see the way Jenna talked to you?" he whispered. "The way she trusted you? The way she leaned on you when she stopped leaning on me?" My chest tightened. "This has nothing to do with Jenna." "It has everything to do with Jenna," he snapped, then forced his voice calm again. "She deserved stability, a real future, and you were in the way." I stared at him, disbelief twisting into something darker. "You were supposed to die last year," Mark continued. "The accident on Highway 12? That wasn't an accident. Henry was supposed to make sure you didn't walk away, but Henry got soft. He warned you without you knowing. So the job failed." My blood ran cold. And then Mark said, "Somehow I became the one drowning." Henry's debts piled up, and the people above him started looking at me. He glanced at the facilitator. "So I gave them something more valuable than money," he said. "I gave them you." The facilitator smiled approvingly. My hands curled into fists. "You brought me here to die," I whispered. Mark nodded. "Yes, but don't worry. No one will know. It will look like you stepped into something you didn't understand. It will look like you made a mistake." He stepped back and gestured toward the chair opposite mine. "Let's finish this." But before he could sit, the facilitator raised a hand. "Wait," he said. "There's a problem." Mark stiffened. What problem? The facilitator pointed at me. He knows too much. Mark frowned. That was the point. The facilitator shook his head. For the meeting? Yes. But for death? He gave a small smile. Death requires ignorance. Otherwise it's unpredictable. Mark's voice wavered. What are you saying? The facilitator stepped behind him. I'm saying, he whispered, you're the one who knows too much now. Mark turned, confused. And in that split second, the facilitator slid a thin metal blade across his throat with quiet efficiency. Jenna's husband collapsed silently, eyes wide, mouth opening and closing in shock as he bled across the concrete floor. I couldn't move. The facilitator wiped the blade with clinical calm. Then he looked at me. Your death is no longer required, he said. I stared, stunned. What? Mark was the debt, he said simply. Not you, you were leverage, nothing more, my pulse thundered. You're free to go. I blinked, unsure if I'd heard him correctly. What do you mean, free? He smiled politely. Some men must die to keep balance, he said. Mark was one of them. You, Daniel, you were never meant to die, you were meant to deliver him. My stomach twisted. Go home, he said gently. Forget this. No one will bother you again. I stood slowly. And if I talk, he shrugged. Who would believe you? I looked once at Mark's body, still, pale, finally silent. Then I walked out, into the night, into a life forever changed. Into a truth I would carry alone, and the facilitator's final words followed me like a shadow. Some debts are paid in silence,